In a predictably pathetic display, elected Republican officials and members of the right-wing media seemed to struggle through the 5 stages of grief as Donald Trump's Manhattan trial began, with some of them openly begging the entire jury pool to acquit Trump, and others rationalizing to themselves and their viewers that they only need one juror to rebel for Trump to avoid conviction. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, obviously the biggest story of the day was the beginning of this unprecedented trial for Donald Trump, a former president, in Manhattan. It's the Manhattan, quote-unquote, hush money trial. And I know a lot of people think that this is an unimportant case, and certainly I think it's the least important of the 4 major cases before Donald Trump, but it's still incredibly important because it's not really about a philandering politician who's courting the evangelical vote, which is absurd. It's actually about an election interference case with regards to the 2016 election, the election that Donald Trump won. So it actually has broader implications for American democracy. And yet, despite all of that, it doesn't stop members of the so-called party of law and order, like Byron Donalds, a sitting Republican congressman from Florida, begging the jury pool in Manhattan, because today was when the jury was, or at least began the process of jury selection, basically begged all of Manhattan to acquit Donald Trump. Really pathetic stuff.
My plea is to the people of Manhattan that may sit on this trial. Please do the right thing for this country. Everybody's allowed to have their political viewpoints, but the law is supposed to be blind and no respecter of persons. This is a trash case. There is no crime here. And if there is any potential for a verdict, they should vote not guilty.
I don't know if that counts as jury tampering. I think you could probably make the case. This is coming from a sitting Republican congressman. Sir, the trial has not even begun. The prosecution has not made the case. You only know what you think you know from the media. This is preliminary. During the trial, that's when evidence is presented and examined and cross-examined and rebutted. It hasn't even begun, and you're already saying it's a trash case with no merit whatsoever and urging the entire borough of Manhattan, borough of New York, to effectively find Trump not guilty. Super pathetic stuff, especially coming from somebody, again, who's part of the law and order party, right? Instead, what you should be insisting is, listen, please don't be prejudiced either way. If you don't like Donald Trump, evaluate the evidence clearly and rationally and come to an impartial decision. At least that would make sense and would be commensurate with a true law and order principle. But of course, we know that Republican congresspeople, elected Republicans, don't care about law and order, particularly when it comes to Trump or even just themselves in general. Again, as I've said, law and order, that's for liberals, it's for progressives, for Democrats, for people in blue cities and blue states. Those are the people who are beholden to law and order, not Donald Trump, not Republicans, not conservatives. Then you also have right-wing media, right, which is less pathetic, I suppose, because it's worse when it comes from elected officials like Byron Donalds, but it's still pretty pathetic when it comes from the Fox propaganda network, especially because, again, they're supposed to be conservative. They're supposed to be believers in law and order. But just the rationalization here from Fox and Friends and others like that, about, maybe the judge should have thrown this out. And, we really only need one juror to create a hung jury and for Donald Trump to avoid conviction. We'll play the clip and unpack it.
Real quickly before we let you go, did the judge have the ability, because we've been talking about the legal case right here, is there a law being broken? Did he have the opportunity to throw this out based on standing?
Well, he could have thrown it out on a number of grounds. But one thing that, I'm concerned about and troubled by in this case is the judge could have taken a look at this indictment and said, hey, you got to take this back and you got to make this more particularized because it's unclear to me what he actually did. What's the underlying crime? How are we at a felony stage when the statute of limitations has run on, the misdemeanor part? So he could have easily sent that back to the lawyers and said, come back to me with something more specific so that the defendant in this case actually knows what's going on.
And the clock was not ticking during the pandemic. They put everything on hold or else the statute of limitations would have run out?
Yeah, it ran out during that time. And now, his predecessor didn't bring the case at the time. Now has said in subsequent interviews, well, it's because the pandemic and SDNY told me to stand down. But everyone now after the fact is explaining why they didn't actually do it at the time.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Again, super pathetic stuff coming from Fox.
Yeah.
Hey, you only need one.
Yeah.
You only need one juror.
That's right. Okay.
And again, that's Katie Pavlik. They're supposed to be their legal commentator, their legal analyst. Not supposed to be Laura Ingraham and others. And yet, they're openly rooting for a particular outcome, which is super gross. They only need one. What they're hoping for is that there will at least be one juror in there who will not vote to acquit Trump, presumably because they're a MAGA cultist, right? In disguise, they snuck through the jury selection process, and then they create what's called a hung jury because, according to the Supreme Court, it is unconstitutional to render a conviction unless the jury verdict is unanimous. So if all of the other members of the jury want to convict Trump, but one person says, no, we need to acquit Trump, then Trump is acquitted. Right, that's what they're banking on. And this is also a concern among progressive commentators and progressive legal analysts as well, like Elie Mystal. So I'm going to play this clip. This is from an MSNBC, a show in which this very topic comes up.
Jury selection is kind of going to be the whole ball game because all Trump needs is one. All Trump needs is one cultist, one dyed-in-the-wool Trump supporter to sneak into that jury, and he can hang the whole thing. He or she can hang the whole thing. So, that's going to be where the ball game is. But to answer your question kind of at a higher level, Eamon, the goal is not to find somebody who doesn't have an opinion on Trump. That is impossible. The goal is to find people who, in good faith, are willing to put aside what they already know and believe about Trump, and instead take in only the evidence presented to them at trial. Now, that is difficult. That is not something, frankly, that I could do. Right? If you put me on the jury, I'd be like, no, I've already made up my damn mind. Right? So that, I'm out of that jury pool. But I'm going to sound naive, but I think in New York City, you could find 12 people, not who don't have an opinion on Trump, but who are willing to put that aside as best they can and listen to the evidence presented to them at trial. I do think there's a hope that can happen, and I do hope that both the judge and the prosecutors are looking for those 12 people. Trump's attorneys are going to be looking for their own cultists. I mean, they're going to be trying to do the Sun, are we right? But the rest of the
who's wearing a red tie? Who's wearing who's
Yeah, it's almost like a Hail Hydra sort of thing. It's almost like an MCU moment where Trump's attorneys are going to be looking for just these subtle clues to indicate that the person in question is a MAGA cultist who, again, can slip through jury selection. But again, good on Elie Mystal for saying that he doesn't think that he would survive jury selection. I don't know if I could either, right? And this is also something that, this plagues juries in any situation, particularly with any public official, right? Because as Elie Mystal points out, you're not going to find somebody who's agnostic on Donald Trump or, again, if the shoe was on the other foot, President Biden or Barack Obama or whoever else, right? This isn't something that's unique to Trump, but any sort of high profile, controversial public figure. You're looking for people who give you proof or persuade you that in good faith, they can set their preconceived notions, good or bad, about a particular person aside and evaluate the evidence. That's pretty hard, but it's something that's been part and parcel of jury selection for private citizens and public figures since the American legal system began. So again, this is not a new or novel issue. Now, Elie Mystal mentioned Trump's attorneys. Well, Jake Tapper on CNN interviewed one of Donald Trump's attorneys and also brought this notion up. And this is what they had to say with respect to jury selection.
Thanks for joining us. The potential jury is going to be asked about where they get their news, if they have ever attended a campaign rally for Mr. Trump, and more. What will Mr. Trump's legal team be looking for to try to at least get one juror who might vote not guilty?
Well, Jake, I think at the end of the day, what we're looking for are fair-minded and impartial jurors who are going to consider the facts and the law, and jurors who are going to come into this case with an open mind. I think in light of the wall-to-wall media coverage, in light of all the sensationalism surrounding this trial, and in light of the fact, frankly, that we're at the height of a presidential election, I think it's going to be a very difficult task, and that's why jury selection in this case is expected to take a very long time.
I also think it's going to be a difficult task. I mean, I agree with Elie Mystal. New York is the most populous city in the United States, so you can probably eventually find 12 people that you're reasonably comfortable with that in good faith will evaluate the outcome of this court case just based purely on the evidence. But it may take a while. You may have to kiss a few frogs before you find your prince, so to speak. But anyway, just super pathetic stuff. Again, from sitting members of Congress. Byron Donalds disgraced himself, but of course he's done that time and time again, so I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. And the Fox Propaganda Network as well, just completely defecating all over their so-called law and order bona fides. They don't care. At the end of the day, Elie Mystal is correct. The Republican Party and right-wing media, they're just simply part of a cult in which Donald Trump is held above not just local law, state law, not just federal law, but also the Constitution. They believe that he should be given a free pass. When he said that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose support, that was a prophecy from Trump describing right-wing media and the Republican Party. And based on everything I've seen, it's come true. Let me know what you think in the comments.